Hey guys, Hassan Rahim here, one of the co-hosts of the Peakcast. Excited to share one of our guests that is coming up, Rick Ranucci. Rick has been someone who has done a lot for Strive, behind the scenes, in front of you, everything possible. Rick is going to share about giving back with your wisdom and not always your tangibles, but intangibles is such a big difference. So stay tuned, listen, learn, and I take away a lot from Rick almost every single week I possibly can. So this is a big opportunity for you guys to learn and to become someone who can give back to the community and not always think about yourself, but think about us as one unity. So enjoy and stay tuned. This is the Peakcast,
presented by Strive 365,
where we strive to eliminate childhood trauma
while equipping youth to become resilient and better our community.
We discuss social and emotional issues affecting today's time
while bringing you experienced leaders to discuss diverse topics in a fun and informative way.
Strive 365 coming to you all the way live.
Strive 365 coming to you all the way live. Welcome to Season 3 of the Peakcast. We have another episode for you guys. This is JP Kiddo Casey with my co-host Hassan Rahim the Dream. Hassan, who we got here today?
Man, we got a really special guest, and I say special because he has been a big part of Strive in so many different ways. He's been there from the start. He has really impacted us on and off. A lot of times you guys won't even see him here, but he's still impacting us in so many different ways. And I've been able to learn a lot from him being a young attorney. He's been a very successful attorney for a long time. And none other than Rick Ranucci. Rick, so we're really pleased to have you on here. Thank you for making your time from Indianapolis to come here for this episode. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Hassan. JP, thanks, man, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Our audience don't know who you are. So tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you did in the past, and what you're doing now.
Okay, great. Well, I'm my life has been a working life, right? And based in Indianapolis. And I was a working lawyer most of my life, but I'd stepped out and done some other things. I was a publisher for a while at Simon & Schuster, and actually got really involved in that. Sort of took it on as a temporary job, but loved it. You know how you take those spurs, right, from your career, and worked my way up to publisher. And we had a reverse acquisition, and we bought a publishing company in New York City. So I got assigned out there temporarily and took that over. It's called Brady Games. So it was Brady Publishing. It was sort of a high-level programming publishing company. And then I got really interested in video games, right? Mm-hmm. And when they were really hot, this is like 20 years ago, and they were just coming up, right? So we turned it into a video game publishing, and we started this large trim size, like 4-color game guides, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, we were selling this traditional channels like Barnes & Noble and those kind of places. And we started selling to Walmart and Blockbuster and did racking and got into all those stores. So we became sort of a mass market imprint, the only one in our group, you know. And that was really fun. So I got into that. So I stayed with that longer than I ever intended to. So I was with that for 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. I've done healthcare consulting. Some of the people that I was involved with in publishing, I got involved with, and we did an internet startup. That was 3 years. Awesome. And we did that with some local business people, a guy who was the CEO of a public company, and we raised a bunch of money, and we ended up selling that company to Buy.com out in the Lake Viejo in Southern California. And I sort of did the administrative work on that, and it was fun. So I've really sort of practiced law my whole career, but every once in a while I take these spurs and do something that's lateral, right? Yeah. Because I have short attention span theater. And
you're having fun.
I'm having great fun.
Diversifying yourself and building new skills and knowledge. And
absolutely.
That's something that we really enjoy learning from you, Rick, when we have you here. You're able to teach us so many different things.
Yeah. The fun's important. Yeah. I mean, I think, you can live the kind of life where you build equity and do the same thing every day, but you can also live an exploratory life. I mean, I like that because when I saw the gaming industry blowing up, I thought, I'd sort of like to be there. And then when I saw the internet craze, I mean, this is back around the turn of the millennium, right? Like everybody had a startup. Everybody was taking their chance at riches and building something. and I wanted to be involved in that. It was really fun.
Yeah. So let me ask you, how did you get involved with Strive? Someone being from Indianapolis. Well, we all know, but if you can share the audience.
Yeah. I was Brandon Curry and I are really good friends. Yeah. Brandon was a client of mine in my law practice. And we really hit it off. You know what I loved about Brandon was I tell the story that, so every client I would say, I'm going to give you these documents and this request, and please fulfill these because it's going to save you a ton of money if you do that. And every one of my clients would say, I'll have it done for you immediately. And then nobody would do it. And then I'd end up having to do it, and then I'd send them the big bill, and then they'd complain. Right? That was the series that I was used to. Brandon, I gave him that assignment, and like 24 hours later, he had everything in order. And I said, who is this guy? Yeah. And turns out that he's a super action-oriented person. Yep. And I love that about him. It turns out, even though he's, physically like a giant man, that he's like, is emotionally intact, right? Yeah. As anybody I've ever met. I was just so impressed. He's truly a champion at sport. Treated everybody well, and we just became really good friends. So our case ended. We had a successful conclusion. I thought, oh, this is sort of sad. We're done. And then he offhandedly said to me, I want to buy this tennis business. And I said, I do that too. So we met for pizza, and we made that a campaign. And then we just started all these campaigns together. And when he got involved in the celebrity match with James Blake for the Old Hervis Adams Foundation, which was the precursor to Strive. I was involved with that, both as a fan and as a supporter of his and this and that. So I met Tom Hervis and Chaz Mulcahy and the principals of that foundation. And that led to my involvement with Strive. So I like so many people can say I've ridden Brandon's coattails. Yeah.
No, I mean, you have not. You have really been there for us and helped guide Brandon in a lot of ways, guide all of us. So we're really thankful to have you here, and you've helped us indirectly and directly in so many ways. So.
Well, I mean, the feeling's mutual. Like I told Brandon, like it's so luxurious for me to work in Milwaukee this week and helping Strive because it energizes me. I'm retired now. Yep. And it's really energizing. It's really a good cause. I'm really proud of what the work Strive does.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's really motivating too because you and Brandon are both very entrepreneurial. I think you're not riding in his coattails, but you find your partner in crime where you guys both love and enjoy doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So some of our key values is called FACES, right? Foster resilience, act with empathy, cultivate trust.
Yes.
Cultivate change. Yep.
Cultivate change, establish trust, and serve youth.
Yes.
Those are our key values. Where do you see you using these values like in your everyday life? Like, what is one example using one of those letters?
One of them. Yep.
Well, I still practice law on a part-time basis.
Okay.
And I try to use those in law practice. Oh, awesome. I've always told clients that I consider a law case not a traumatic event. It's not a war, a tug of war over resources. It's not really a win-lose. That the best way to approach a law case is to think of it as a transformative experience, to internalize the meaning of it. And that's what I try to do. So I find a client, usually a client has a law case when a client is experiencing some kind of conflict. And they're usually personally upset about the conflict, and they're very off balance. Sometimes that's exactly when they're making their worst decisions, not their best decisions. So I feel like the role of the lawyer is not just to be a mouthpiece, an advocate, or to get them the things they want, but also to be a little bit of a counselor within responsible limits and use those principles you talked about, JP, to get them in a state of equilibrium. So number one, they're making their best decisions. And number two, they feel that they can internalize the experience to make it something that they leave the law case a better person than they were before. So really, it's role of lawyer as teacher or personal guide, as you would be with youth maybe in your program. So I try to employ that. Not because I'm superior to them, because when I meet them, they're off balance, and I'm on balance because for me, it's a professional matter. For them, it's usually personal or threatening, and they're off balance, right? So.
And then you can look at it objectively, and they're
exactly
in the shoes, so they kind of have their little rattled of what's going
on. Absolutely.
Just as the kids are.
Yeah.
we're looking at why are you not doing this? But a lot of times there's things going on at home, there's things going on in their class, maybe they're not getting along with someone, and we can't see that until we can build that relationship with them. So
Absolutely.
that's important.
The very nature of litigation in our culture is traumatic. This is the part television doesn't show you, but the typical person, when they get a lawsuit in the mail, they feel sick to their stomach. I mean, they feel like they've been gut punched. And it's not just an impersonal experience where they grab their lawyer and say, oh, how much am I going to have to pay? It's not about that. It's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm being attacked. Did I do something wrong? My life is crumbling. And the first job is to stabilize, catch them, put them in a relaxed state, get them to reframe the issue. That's very important.
I agree.
Or else they can't make good decisions and they're off base and they're defensive and that makes their life miserable.
And they may commit the same mistake, which becomes just what they think. Oh, I did it. I was already accused of it. Let me do it again. A lot of kids do that. It's, oh, they already think I'm a bad kid in the class. So, that's just who I am. Let me just continue to do it. So
absolutely. Contrary to popular belief where people think in litigation that the first instinct is to fight. The first instinct of most people is I will give them whatever they want to make this go away because this really bothers me and hurts me and it's painful. And people ought not to do that, but they have to get themselves into a state of equilibrium before they can take a balanced approach.
100%.
Or the opposite. If someone is an angry and very a person who's comfortable with conflict, you have to get them an equilibrium approach so that they're not too aggressive.
Yeah, so guys, today our episode, the topic is called Levels of Wisdom. So Rick has really been able to grow as an individual and be able to give it back, and he's had so much wisdom. Met with him this week, and we were supposed to meet for a couple hours, turned into 5 hours just because there was so much that he could teach me. So Rick, my first question to you in the meat of the podcast is, what skills and knowledge have you gained during your whole entire life through all these different skills and different entrepreneurships and business and everything you've done? How have you used all of that now to give back to the youth and the community?
Well, I have an answer to that because I really have developed a very simple but sort of unified purpose in my little individual life, right? I taught for many years at the university. That was my avocation. I taught philosophy in the evening at Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis, right? Where Brandon was a varsity coach. Coincidentally, I didn't know him in that role because it's a huge staff, right? But I developed an approach during that time that was theoretical or cerebral. And then I was practicing law during the day, and I sort of developed a clinical approach based on that because it is really almost a clinical setting when you're dealing with individuals. So here's what it is. I consider myself and other people to do the right thing when they treat each individual as an important end in himself or herself. I don't know if I can say their self. I don't know if that's a word. Okay. But it's that simple. Whenever I or someone else is taking another individual and saying, I am recognizing that that individual has a life and has an interest in living the same as I do. And I'm not treating that person as a means to an end. That's not a producer, it's not a consumer. That person may be all those things, but that's not primarily how I relate to them. Primarily, I relate to them as a person who will be born, who will die, who will have a life, who will have all the special and meaningful things and love and all the humanity that I will have and each of us will have. That there may be 7 billion of us, but each one of us in importance is worthy to rule an entire galaxy. And we just diminish the importance of each individual because we happen to be clumped together like this. When I'm plugged in at that level and other people are plugged in at that level, I feel like life is perfect. When we get away from that and we start to depersonalize, dehumanize, use people as means to ends, whatever the pursuit is, whether it's teaching, law, corporatizing youth programs, whatever it might be, I call it industrialization, where you forget about the individual and you start thinking about bigger goals, then to me, life is off base. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So it sounds like you're saying that you understand there's a bigger purpose for everything you're doing, and if we all come together, we can really impact the world in a positive way. And a lot of times people don't think, oh, I'm just impacting the world, I'm just impacting myself. And that's kind of what I see with JP, Brandon, James, Jack, all these individuals who are going into the schools, and they're really, you guys are thinking kids first. Like, I'm not here for myself, I'm here to create a change and help these youth out. So yeah, it definitely answers it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, you know, kind of what you said, Rick, like it's like intersectionalities, you know, every person is their own person, you know, race, gender, and all that stuff. It's really nice too, because when we work with our youth, you know, we establish relationships with the individuals, and we're not trying to get the class done, we're not trying to get through a whole lesson, but we cater it to the students. So if they need more attention, more one-on-one personal time, one of our coaches will actually talk with them and build that connection and treat them as an individual.
Yeah. That's what everybody needs, whether it's a kid in a camp who's had traumatic experiences, or whether it's a CEO who's got a huge wallet to buy legal services.
Yeah.
Whoever it is on the spectrum, most people need to be treated as an individual. They want someone to care about them. They want to feel like they belong to something.
Yeah. That's
because we are instances of humanity.
Yeah.
And it really is about humanity. When we start to systematize and dehumanize, depersonalize, and think of people as cogs in the wheel versus individual ends, that's when we get in trouble. I mean, that's the simple little lesson I've learned in every activity that I've had in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I like Strike so much, is because it is built on that.
Yep.
Every kid counts.
Yeah.
And who knows what that kid's going to do.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. Rick is a very giving man. So have you always been giving like your time and your services to the community, or, you know, did it start at a certain point in your age, or have you always been like that when you were young?
Well, thank you for that attribution. I'm not sure it's deserved, because I do have that part of myself, but at the same time, I do participate in a system of great inequities. You know, I drive a car. It's not the most expensive car I could buy, but it's too expensive when you consider that people are dying of starvation in the world. Like the philosopher Peter Singer would say, Rich, what are you doing? You know? So I participate in a financial system that has tremendous inequity. So the stain of that sin, right, is on me. Within that system, I may not be the greediest person. To answer your question, what I've come to believe is this, and this is not research-based, but this is simply based on my experience. I think people have almost a natural and genetic, or a natural systemic predisposition toward either selfishness or selflessness. Adam Grant, who's at the Wharton School, does a lot of research on this. And he has a quiz you can go online and take. It's really interesting. And basically, it's how much you are a giver, a taker, or a matcher. And I tend to believe that is part of one's nature. When I was a kid, I remember my mom. I was an only child, and my mom had this birthday party when I was like 8 or 10 years old, and she invited all adults, no kids, right? So they brought like adult value gifts, and there was like, I know I was the only kid, and there's like a table full of gifts. And my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Geyer, just read us a story about a kid whose dad had built him a bicycle and made the tires like out of inner tubes, and he was so proud of it. When the other kids saw it, you know, they made fun of him.
Yeah.
He didn't know he was poor. Yeah. And he got his first flash from the audience. You're poor. You ought to be ashamed because you're poor. Yeah. It was devastating to me, but I buried it. But then like in a short time later, then I had this embarrassment of riches, and like I broke down crying. And my mother's like, what are you crying for? You know, it's your birthday party. You got these gifts, right? I was crying, I now know as an old man, it's not because I didn't have my self-interest switch on. I wasn't looking for gifts. I was looking for an understanding of the world of how a kid could be mistreated, and you know, for that kind of thing. And I remember in the 7th grade, I had a friend whose dad could not afford to let him bowl. And we got 2 games of bowling in gym class, but our parents had to pay for it. So I bowled a game, and then I said to the teacher, I said, oh, can Benny bowl my 2nd game? Because his dad wasn't able to sign him up. And I saw my teacher turn around. and she was going like this, and I thought, what's she doing? You know, is she having a asthma attack or something? She was crying. So I think when I look at the boy in me, I think I had a natural predisposition to understand that sharing is good.
Yeah.
And I think some people do. And then I think people are on the other end of the spectrum. People are sort of scripted with the kind of self-interest that I would characterize as almost sociopathic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's continuum. And that's why I think that education and heightening awareness on those issues is so important.
Yeah.
Another thing I love about Strive, because Strive is so interactive that it challenges the participants and it challenges the kids to know who they are. Because it's not really important whether you come out of the box as a giver or a taker. What's important is that you're aware of that about yourself and you reach a point upon maturity and choice that you're comfortable with. And I'm still working on that.
Yeah. Every day is a day to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And you learn different ways. I mean, you learned as a young kid that, hey, I can give to this kid a bowling game. A lot of people don't even think that. They think, oh, you know, the first game I only bowled 180 or something. I don't know. Do you get what do you score?
Nah, I'm a 180.
Okay.
I get
180 is like my best.
We gotta do a team bowl.
Yeah, we have.
That's like two of my games.
Yeah. So I might be hyping myself. I might be 90 really. But you think, you know, your initial reaction is, oh, I didn't get my high score. Let me definitely bowl the second game because I'll do better. But yours was, you know, this is bigger than a game. This is
and I agree.
So much more.
It is a lifelong struggle. If, for instance, you say, I want to benefit other individuals as endpoints in themselves. Yeah. So you get to be my age, you're retired, and you look and say, okay, given what I need in life, am I going to be able to make it out of life and have enough money to support myself? Okay. Do you have any left over? Maybe I've got a little pile that's left over. Yeah. So what do I do with that? Upgrade my car or help people get to a position of basic needs and safety? Or do I just save it? And all these voices that you developed in your head through your whole life is, you better save it. You know, you might get in trouble later on. Or why don't you buy a car because you're getting old and you're losing your physicality. And if you're in a big fancy car, people think you're more powerful. Yeah. And those voices still speak to you. And so for me, the challenge of getting older in life is to put those voices at rest and become a better person. And by better, I mean at least be open to the idea that you can share. Yeah. You know, this whole idea that we own resources, right? Like they say, you know, some people are born on third and think they hit a triple. I mean, most of us have resources because of the circumstances of our birth, yet we believe in this sort of personal ownership and possession. I mean, I'm in favor of the whole market economy and individual ownership and possession, obviously. But at the same time, it doesn't really belong to us. Yeah. I sort of agree with Elizabeth Warren in that way. Anybody who's gotten rich has gotten rich on the public schools and the public roads and really owes it to pay something back.
So kind of jumping into that a little bit, you live in Indianapolis and we are here in Milwaukee. So you've really seen both areas and you've understood. JP, you've only lived in Milwaukee, correct? I've lived in North Carolina, High Point, North Carolina. And Charlotte as well, and now Milwaukee. So we've all kind of seen different things. Yeah. Can you touch on the disparities that you see in Indianapolis and Milwaukee, and then why you feel like, man, I really need to help those problems? Can you touch on that?
Well, I went to Butler University, Brander's alma mater, where he was a championship, tennis player, right? And they have really interesting public speaking programs. And Van Jones, the guy from CNN, Jones, great. He was there. Yeah. And he was very unguarded. And he claimed that Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Milwaukee are the only three cities in America that have a higher youth poverty rate now than they did 30 years ago. Wow. So first of all, if that statistic is true, which I tend to believe Van Jones, although I'm not independent.
He's done his research. We can agree on that.
That in itself should be sufficient motivation to get involved because, but even if that's not the case comparatively to 30 years ago, because you'd like to think that we improved and that we didn't fall back, but a high percentage, maybe 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 children in the United States of America are under the poverty line. And we define the poverty line in a way that is very stark.
Yeah.
Right? Those kids aren't getting things like my kids got.
Yeah.
We're talking about poverty.
Yeah. Which none of us would even be able to really relate to at all.
Right. I mean, it's not having basic needs. And I think to myself, wow, the reality of that in 200 years when they look back at us and they take a snapshot and we're the old timey, we're the old school, what are they going to look at? And they're going to say, gosh, people were building internet companies, having law practices, making millions and billions of dollars, right? And 1 of 4 or 1 of 5 children in America didn't have sufficient food, didn't have a safe place to go, didn't have a bed to lay down in. That kind of disparity is per se irrational. We're just desensitized to it because of the spirit of our time. So, I mean, that's enough motivation for me to do a little bit to get back, right?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that stat as well of those 3 cities. Did not know that, but you see it. You definitely see it, but you have to really be in there. Like if I was in North Carolina,
you have to be in the trenches for that to kind of experience it. I've never been in Indianapolis, lived in Milwaukee my whole life, but I see those disparities. But if I've been to Indiana, it would probably be the same way. Rick, so why are you such a strong advocate for Strive 365? Like, where do you see, how do you see us impacting the community, different communities, and where do you see us in the future?
Well, I had a personal experience that I'll relate to the answer to that question. Okay, so I taught for all these years. And I was just an adjunct in the philosophy department because I was not an academic. I was not publishing papers. I wasn't a tenure level professor, right? So I'm just a little appendage. I'm just a teacher, developing a few courses, teaching them over the years. And I thought, well, I mean, this is a little dalliance of mine. I find it interesting, but it's not going to have any effect. And then, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, somebody sends me this newspaper article, right? And I read this newspaper article and I think, why did they send this to me? It's a Seattle paper. And it's a guy being interviewed. He's in charge of programs for impoverished youth in Seattle. And I thought, why would they? But I was curious, so I read the article and I'm reading, and they asked him, why did you pursue this instead of doing something in business or this or that? And I didn't recognize the guy's name, and he says, many years ago, I had a professor for ethics class at IUPUI named Richard Ranucci who motivated me, and I dedicated my life to this.
Wow.
And I thought, I literally don't remember that fellow's name.
Yeah.
Now, he's gone out and done good works that far surpass me, and he gives me some little bit of credit for that. And it taught me that you never know the effect you will have on the world to build the values and the feeling of self-worth of other individuals. And I feel like that's exactly what Strive does. I mean, honest to God, there could be a kid in that Strive program who does something magnificent in 30 years or does something average but not heinous, right? In 20 years, the headline is not that somebody went in and shot up an office building and killed 15 people who are cherished by 100 more because of this. Or somebody became a U.S. congressman and was the crucial vote that a lot of kids ate and had a lunch program. And that kid became a congressman instead of going to prison because of what you did today, JP, right? What you did today. I mean, building better lives is just, how can it not be directionally correct? How can it not be inherently valuable? I mean, I think Strive is a textbook example of the best that we have to offer in our age. I think in 200 years, people will say, boy, those Strive people would fit right in with society now because we take care of each other. They were pioneers. They were ahead of themselves, right? They were not part of the problem where we depersonalized and dehumanized. And I think, just one last thing, I mean, especially in youth sports, because I was a dad, I had three children, I had them in sports program, I was a coach, and I know that when you have your children in sports program, you start out saying, well, my kids are in there to build character and to be healthy and to get some exercise, but really, when you become the coach, you want to win.
100%,
And then a kid makes a a base running mistake, and you find yourself like, what were you thinking? That was so stupid. And you're actually treating this kid as a means to you winning a softball game instead of remembering why you're there. I know how easy it is. Yeah. We go crazy in youth sports. It displays the worst of our culture, the insanity of the self-interest of our culture. And when you can take youth sports and flip it 180 and make it a vehicle to empower each individual and make them an endpoint in themselves and make a great experience. I mean, to me, Strive is a poster child for a change in society that is so much bigger. Yeah. It is the future. I mean, I love the essence of Strive for that reason. I mean, I just think it's great. It's a personalization. It's a humanization organization.
Thank you, Rick, for being one of the best guests we've had on this podcast due to showing that tangibles aren't everything. Your intangibles can carry so far and really provide weight that no one else could ever dream of. Rick has been someone who has provided a lot of wisdom, not just on this episode, but to Strive. And Rick, we're just very thankful to have you on here. And viewers, we really hope that you can learn that it's not about you always. It's about making a difference to the community, and together, we can create a great community, and it's all about unity.
Strive 365 coming to you all the way live. Thanks for listening to the Peakcast. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest content.